Welcome for all of you who have signed up to take this journey we're going to call microeconomics. I think it's most important that you understand not to view economics from a very narrow perspective. Microeconomics is a very detailed part of economics. There's other branches of economics. So I think what's most important is perhaps just to introduce you to a general way that economists view what it is that we study. And everything must come in this class back to what is called capitalism. Now, generally speaking, if we were in class and I was to ask you, hey, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Let's do word association. I'd have you close your eyes, and I'd say, all right, first thing that comes to mind when I say the word capitalism. And I'd go around and I'd hear a variety of answers. There's some commonalities, and one of the most common answers tends to be money. And definitely capitalism is not money, but rather money just naturally develops in such a system known as capitalism. And the realization of doing that over a number of years is that most of us have actually no idea what capitalism actually is. So what I did is I went and I looked not to what I think, but rather what people who actually call themselves capitalists think, because there's a lot of people who use the term capitalism, but clearly that is not what capitalism actually is to an actual capitalist. And I know that you have gone through your years of school. You have been introduced to analytical ways of analyzing literature, things along those lines. And I must tell you that it's very, very negative toward capitalism, which frankly is not a well-rounded education at all. So here we go. Number one, capitalism and the term laissez-faire. Notice the time period, 1825. Notice the geographical origin of such a term. So we're talking about this development of formal economic theory during this period of industrialization, of American Revolution, of French Revolution, as more and more people are moving from an agrarian society to this notion of commerce, ladies and gentlemen. And if I was to look up a dictionary definition of laissez-faire capitalism, it says it is a doctrine opposing governmental interference in economic affairs beyond the minimum necessary for the maintenance of peace and property rights. Key things to identify. Number one, it is a doctrine, and it does not say that government does not have a place, though many believe government does not have a place, but rather if there is government, the only acceptable means of interference is the establishment and support of property rights. Private property is a very foundation of capitalism. It's associated with a number of individuals, and this is what we call the economic joke. This is Karl Marx. Most of you will probably recognize Karl Marx and think of the book, The Communist Manifesto, but rather from a perspective of an economist, we look at more of his other works with Engels, known as Das Kapital, and he is the one who actually coined the term. So it comes down to really what is capital and what role does it play in capitalism. So, Ayn Rand, which would be a name that perhaps your parents or your grandparents would recognize, during this particular time period in, I don't know, the probably 50s, 60s in academia, 70s. This is what Ayn had to say about capitalism. And she wrote the very long novel known as Atlas Shrugged and a number of others that used to be required reading. Capitalism is a social system based on the recognition of individual rights, including property rights, in which all property is privately owned. One more time. All property is privately owned. The recognition of individual rights entails the banishment of physical force from human relationships. Basically, rights can be violated only by means of force. In a capitalist society, no man or group may initiate the use of physical force against others. Things to highlight one more time. All property is privately owned. The only function of government is the task of protecting man's right, i.e., of the foundation of private property. So, what you may not know, because of what you read about in the news or you hear from some other teachers, perhaps in the social studies and or the English literature areas, is criticism of capitalists is not actually what capitalists themselves think is. So when I heard a friend of mine who says, oh, hey, Mr. Wind, isn't Somalia a true example of a free market? Well, as in pure capitalism, the answer clearly is no. Unless there's a system that respects 100% private property, then it is not what capitalism actually is. And you see a lot of these terms: originality, peace, trade, variation, liberty, exchange, beauty. These are terms that capitalists see that would exist within a system of capitalism, as opposed to perhaps what you hear about how, hey, capitalism has been so bad for the world. Capitalists would say, well, actually, due to actual capitalism, the world is better off, and the people that exist within that world, ceteris paribus, are also better off. And I'll talk about the term ceteris paribus means. So, economics. I see all these textbook definitions about what economics is, but I love this, and I picked it up somewhere that I can't remember. Economics is about objectively deductive truths. I am talking about logic. One more time. Objectively deductive truths. However, it's concerning an individual's subjective choices. Wait a second. We are going to be able to deduce something, hold it up as a model, but it's absolutely about the fact that people just decide things because they have feelings. It can be a bit confusing. So I'm not going to ask you which one you think is cute. Generally speaking, everybody would see these two pictures and say, oh, how cute. The better question might be, well, which one is more cute? And we would debate the merits of which answers are right and which answers are wrong. And what we'd have is we'd say the dog people think the cat people are wrong, the cat people think the dog people are wrong. All we would say in actual capitalism is that for whatever reason, some of you prefer dogs and some of you prefer cats. So, what is economics really about? Most important thing. It is about not a dog as a dog, but rather a dog as a particular good or service that is purchased. It's not a cat as a cat per se, but rather a cat that can be purchased or sold. Economics is about people. One more time. Economics is about people. And the reality is that people have to make choices because we exist under conditions of scarcity. One more time. You and I have to make a choice. We can never have it all nor do it all at the same time. That is simply not possible. Every time we make a choice and we choose A, we forego B. There is a cost to every choice that people make. And once again, that's because we exist, ceteris paribus, under conditions of scarcity. So I always enjoyed this comic, Pearls Before Swine. And I actually showed people I enjoyed this comic by the fact that I have chosen to use it as a great example. I'm going to give you guys a quick 20 seconds to read the comic and to laugh hilariously. Fast forward through this 20 seconds, and I probably would be hearing crickets right now. But then perhaps maybe your mom or dad was to walk by and read it. Maybe they would find it very funny. Maybe not. The most important thing we're taking from the comic is this. Maybe it isn't that economists think differently than everyone else, but rather everyone else thinks differently than economists. And one of our primary challenges as we go through this class is to begin to think like economists. which can be even more of a challenge because economists don't all think the same thing. One more time. I'm going to use the general term economist, but I cannot emphasize enough. There are different schools of economic thought, and these economists do not agree with each other. So the first thing I would like you to do as we start this class is there is an assignment. I'm going to bring it up for you guys just so we can do the first part together. Let's see if I can actually find where I had that assignment. Hold on 1 second. There we go. So it's called Thinking Like an Economist, and you're going to find it on Google Classroom. And I just emphasized to you one more time that even though I'm going to say, hey, let's think like an economist, not all economists, of course, do think the same. Very key in this class to read carefully and follow directions and prompts to the T. And it does say all your responses are to be in a red or a blue font. Number one, very simple question, even though it looks like a language I've never heard before. This is the joy of the internet. Your parents and I will tell you. So when I look up the term ceteris paribus, it is trying to tell me all other things being equal. So I'm like you guys. I'm just going to put down the first, all other things being equal. But the challenge in this class, oh great students, is just don't put down an answer to put down an answer. What exactly does it mean? All other things being equal. It is an assumption that you and I will always say to be able to logically conclude something, even though, of course, in our world, not all things are equal. In fact, hardly anything's equal whatsoever. Other things being equal. For example, if ceteris paribus, I am looking at 2 oranges. Would I purchase the one for $5 or would I purchase the one for $2? An economist would say, well, ceteris paribus, you would purchase the one for $2. Who wouldn't? Because $2 is less than $5. Well, what was the point of ceteris paribus, Mr. Wind? It was this. I am assuming that the oranges are exactly the same. There is no difference at all between them. Ergo, I look just at the numerical value to determine which one I will choose. So let's go through prompt number 2 together before I cut you guys loose and have you work through this, because it's really about what do you think. And once again, our goal, this assignment, to learn to see situations from the perspective of an economist. So number 2, if Jones pays $2,000 to Smith for a used car, what was the price of the car? I'm pretty sure that's $2,000. I've fundamentally understood prices ever since I was a little kid. Once again, these are not meant to be trick questions. Even though I know some of you are going to be thinking, oh, wait, what am I really supposed to say? What I would like you to do is say what you think, but just don't jump to a quick answer. Let's go down to prompt B. What was the value of the car for Jones? I'm a little confused here. Isn't it just $2,000? No. $2,000 is called a price. It is quantitative. It is the number that we refer to as economic calculation that then allows you and I to look at our own value system to determine whether or not something is quote unquote worth it. So who is Jones? Jones is the one that pays $2,000 to Smith for a used car. So what is the value of the car for Jones? Oh, this is what an economist would say. They would definitely say more than $2,000. Wait a second, how's that so? I thought the price was $2,000. The price is $2,000, but the question is asking about how does Jones value the car? And since Jones traded the $2,000 for the car, clearly Jones values the car more than $2,000, or else the trade would not have occurred, which helps me understand prompt C. What was the value of the $2,000 for Smith? Well, I'm going to jump straight to the economist. Who is Smith? Smith is somebody who sells the car. Let's think about it this way. Smith is somebody who trades the car for the money, and Jones was the person who traded the money for the car. So why did Smith trade the car? Because Smith values the money more than the car, not at the price. The price just gave both Smith and Jones the ability to determine what they should do. So what can I say? What was the value of the $2,000 for Smith? Well, who's Smith? Smith is the one getting the $2,000. So I think what I can say is more than the car, because that's what Smith is giving up as a result. Let me, of course, make this red to make my teacher proud. And now prompting. Well, who got the better deal? Ceteris paribus. Now all of a sudden I dropped in the term ceteris paribus. What this means is that Jones, who is getting the car, is giving up money. The car and the money are exactly what Smith and Jones both think they are, ceteris paribus. Not that it's counterfeit money or that it's a lemon and Smith knew it, but rather ceteris paribus. So who got the better deal? Well, let me check. Jones got something more than he gave up in terms of his value system. Smith got something more than he gave up in terms of their value system. So who did get the better deal, ladies and gentlemen? This is true capitalism. They both gained in this deal. One more time, let me put it to you this way. This is how capitalists view the system. It was a win-win, people, not one gained and one lost, known as a zero-sum game. Do not buy into that at all. Rather, one more time, win-win. They both gained, ceteris paribus. So, what are my hopes for you? What are you always going to take from such a question? And that is this, because we always need to make sure we have clarifiers. All voluntary, key word in capitalism, it must be voluntary. That is this, one more time. All voluntary transactions are a win-win for those involved and society as a result, because those people involved are part of society, not one wins and one loses. Key thing again, ceteris paribus, ladies and gentlemen. So, I'm at the gas station. There's an old guy complaining to me about how much they have to pay for gas. And I'm looking at them. I'm saying, I wish you would have taken an economics class, because if they're voluntarily buying the gas, that means he's doing it because he values the gas more than the money. They are just being what are called natural humans, complaining about something. But of course, I don't point it out because that would make me probably pretty unpopular. That challenge of the economist. We think a bit differently than other people. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you guys just to finish the rest of the prompts to the best of your ability, and I look forward to continuing our foray into what we're going to call microeconomics.